you know, you've had like maybe moments in life where you don't allow your yes to be yes and your no to be no. You know, for example, like, you know, like when you're a child, right? You get to a point where your mum or dad or somebody that, you know, is like a guardian or whatever, will ask you something like what you want, right? And you're clear on your answer. Normally you'd be like, yes, I want such and such. Your mum or your, you know, your dad may say, you want ice cream? And you're immediately saying, yes, you want it. You're clear on it as a child, right? And then obviously when you don't want something, you're clear on it as well. But it seems like as we get to like the adult age and get to that kind of, you know, societal sort of pressure of always wanting to say yes to certain things when you know damn well you don't want to, you know, not because obviously you want to be, you know, rude, or you just sometimes have your own kind of way of doing things. You know, you have your own plans, you have your own interests, but sometimes you get to a point where you do end up appeasing too much. And I don't know if you've come across that, where you know what you want, but generally you're trying to appease sometimes a crowd. I don't know if you can look back at any kind of moments or even currently. You know, I remember like in old workplaces, sometimes you'd be like, okay, you're going to go in, you're going to do what you're going to do what's required. But at the same time, you know that there's obviously a social aspect to it. You know, you get people who, you know, want to do things on the Friday night, you know, kind of after work, you know, or after work drinks or whatever it is. And sometimes you get to a point where, you know, you're asked about that, right? And then you're like, okay, yeah, no problem. You know, you go to a few. Let's not say you don't go. But at times when you don't want to do certain things and you get to a point where you end up saying yes when you don't want to, you know, you may have an informed decision as to why you're saying, you know, why you don't want to, but you say yes. And then on top of that, you know, you end up saying yes, and then it kind of disrupts how sometimes you come across. At times, some people can go and then feel the vibe or whatever it is, and then, you know, get involved or whatever. But there's times when you're not being yourself, you're not putting on your best sort of, you know, yourself as a person, your best performance. And I think sometimes that does, you know, both parties a disservice. It can do yourself a disservice, and obviously the people that you're even saying yes to when you didn't want to. So yeah, I've noticed that it's important to get to a point where you're being honest with yourself, and most importantly, as much as you can with people around you, irrespective of how it comes across. Because as long as you're saying what's correct, saying what's right to you, then I think it's important that you try and look into that if you're ever going through that kind of, you know, I would say trouble of trying to just keep it real with yourself and keep it real with others. You know, there's times when I would say no, for example, in certain environments. It could be to anyone. It could be sometimes family. It could be sometimes friends, you know, colleagues, whatever. You should prepare to know that you may not even be asked to go to certain environments again, you know, or even it will be lessened, you know, the amount of times you get asked. So it's important to know that it comes with things as well. And you have to be cool with whatever decision you make, and also the sort of impact it may have, you know, because at the end of the day, you know what's important. And you know, obviously, that if you do choose certain things, there's always a sort of a consequence to it. But yeah, I've just realized there's ways to get around, or not get around, or to, I would say, get to a point where you're doing what's right generally, you know, with both parties. And there's a few points that I've spoken to people about, you know, and there's a few points where they've given me kind of understanding of what they've gone through and ways they've had to, you know, handle things. So I think there's 3 key points that should be able to help. And then I'll add another one that helped me personally. So the first one is, you've got to change the approach by deciding to be who you are when making any informed decision. So you're making a decision based on information. You're making a decision based on who you are and what you want. Obviously, like I was saying earlier, you know, you may do things that are required that you really want to do at certain times. You may say yes at certain times. You know, it doesn't mean you don't say, but at times you have to get to a point where you're deciding to be who you are, making an informed decision based on the information that you've been provided with, you know. Also, deciding to mentally let go of the societal perception of what a no can bring. So any kind of societal perception of, oh, you're not looking, to be friendly then, or you're not looking to, partake, you're not fun, you're a party pooper. All of those things, you have to let go of that. It's important to be clear, and it's important to just know at the end of the day what makes sense. What makes sense. You have to assess it and decide, from that perspective of what makes sense, and let go of that societal sort of pressure, and stating the reasons of why you're not looking to do something, or why you're looking to say yes or no, and keep it strictly based on that information, the details that you've received, based on maybe an offer, maybe based on, what someone would want you to do. You may get a job offer, right? You don't want it, but you sometimes don't know how to speak or say what's required, or you may get anything for that matter that revolves around an offer, but your yes and your no sometimes can be unstable. So being able to state the reasons of your answer based on the offer and its details, and that alone is key, but that's some of the things that some people that I've come across over the years have said, these are the sort of things that have helped them, and some things that I've implemented, and some things that I've had to do as well, because it gets to a point where, like I say, you end up sometimes appeasing in ways where you don't need to, and it affects both parties. So yeah, that's the key. But also, when I kept it simple, I went to a Bible verse as well in Matthew. It's strictly about being clear on your yeses and your nos. It mentions let your yes be yes and your no be no, because anything else is like basically unstable, so it's something that shouldn't be. Anything else is not, correct. Anything else is unnecessary, basically. So it's one of those ones where it's important. So yeah, I think for me, these are the things that have helped. These are the things that I think will help generally most people, because once again, you state exactly what it is, they will be clear from that perspective, and then they have a decision to make, and you have a decision to make. Like I say, prepare for sometimes not being asked certain things, being asked to go certain places, but however that infringes on you and where you're at, you have to be mindful of that. So knowing that if you make certain decisions, you have to be mindful of certain consequences. But if you don't mind and you don't care, then hey, it is what it is. You have to do what's required regardless. Everything's going to have a consequence, and everyone is going to make a decision. So you have to look at it from that perspective. But it's not easy for some, but I think it's important to just get to a point where you're being clear, yes or no. Assess what you need to assess, and then make a decision from that point on. But it will be interesting to hear what someone else thinks, other people think, and then get to the point where at least bring some of your points, because I think for me it's helped. It's helped 100% to be able to just say it as it is, and make everyone clear. So yeah, it'll be interesting to hear what other people think.